Time now for Morning Rounds. Joining us are CBS News contributors Dr. Holly Phillips and Dr. Tara Narula. First up this week, the stress factor. A new survey by the American Psychological Association finds that money is the #1 contributor to stress. Despite the improving economy, 29% of Americans report their financial worries have intensified over the past year. Holly, first of all, who feels this the most?
Right. Well, Anthony, again, the vast majority of Americans do feel stress around finances, but the top groups really are parents with children under the age of 18, young adults who may now be grappling with the job market sort of for the first time, and people in lower income brackets.
I have to say, though, I thought for sure it would be men who stress out more, and it's actually not.
No, women are considerably more likely to report high levels of stress. That might be because women are just more likely to communicate it. But I think regardless of who it's
I'm not picking up on that. I'm not touching that.
But, regardless of who's the primary breadwinner in the family, women are more often in the position to be buying clothes for the children or to be purchasing groceries. So they might experience it on even a more personal and kind of acute level.
Tara, what are some of the symptoms of stress and how do you handle it?
Right, so stress is a great masquerader. It can manifest in a lot of ways. In physical ways, you can have chest pain, fatigue, you can have stomach upset. In terms of emotional symptoms of stress, you can feel anxiety, sadness, depression, and then there's behavioral symptoms, which would be changes in your eating habits, changes in your sleep, your sex drive, drinking more, or trying drugs or cigarettes. So it can have a lot of different symptoms. In terms of how to deal with it, there are some people who recommend meditation, relaxation exercises, yoga. Social support is a huge one. So having loved ones, friends that you can sort of have there to buffer the stress is helpful. Finding ways to regain control in a situation, because when you feel out of control, that contributes to stress level. And then counseling when, necessary.
It sounds like the trickle down, though, is health, because it says that 1 in 5 Americans skipped doctor appointments because they were fearful about money.
Right, and that's actually probably the worst thing you could do, because we know that stress can contribute to chronic diseases like cancer, heart disease, asthma, psychiatric disease. There's a famous neurobiologist at Stanford named Robert Sapolsky. He wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And he's famous for saying that we have evolved to be smart enough to make ourselves sick. And that's really, what we're doing, because in the wild, when you're a zebra, you're being chased by a lion, you turn on the stress response, you either get eaten and killed or you live, and then it's turned off. In our lives, we're turning it on for psychosocial stressors all the time. We're raising our blood pressure, our heart rate, lowering our immune system, lowering our digestive processes, reproduction and growth, and all of this can contribute to chronic disease.
All right, the British Parliament is getting worldwide headlines after voting to allow the creation of babies from the DNA of 3 people. The controversial procedure is intended to cut the risk of genetic disorders, but critics say it crosses a fundamental scientific boundary and could lead to so-called designer babies. It raised eyebrows on both sides of the Atlantic earlier this week. Mark Phillips has more on that.
Yesterday may well be remembered as the day the genetic future of our species began.
Jamie Metzel is a writer on genetics policy, and his words may sound a little overstated. But not to Poppy's family. She's almost 4 and suffers from mitochondrial disease. She can't walk and can barely speak. Her cells don't produce the energy they need for her to develop. Lily, her sister, does not suffer from the disease, but may carry the genetic defect. The procedure would help mothers whose eggs have a healthy nucleus but are surrounded by defective mitochondria, the little batteries that power cells. That nucleus is transferred to a donor egg with healthy mitochondria. An embryo produced with that hybrid egg would contain DNA from the mother and the father, plus a tiny amount from the egg donor. It's this 3-parent child that poses the ethical dilemma. But not to Poppy's family. It means the girls, Lily certainly, and Poppy, if she lives to reproductive age, could have children who don't have the disease.
It's inherited. It will pass down the female line, so to give them a choice when they come to the age of wanting, thinking about children, an option of having a healthy child.
Science won the moral argument in Britain, but in the U.S. the discussion gets political.
It's very, very difficult to have these kinds of conversations in the United States because we have the big divide between the so-called right to choice and the so-called right to life, that we very, very quickly get caught up in national politics that are in some ways bigger than the issue of mitochondrial transfer.
For CBS This Morning Saturday, I'm Mark Phillips, London.
So the little girl in that story had the disease from a defect in the mitochondria. Are there other diseases that are caused by a defect?
Sure. Well, mitochondrial diseases really represent have a wide spectrum of severity. Some are mild and go almost undetected, and some are extremely severe and fatal even before adulthood. Those include forms of multiple dystrophy, heart, kidney, liver failure, and a number of neurologic diseases as well.
Holly, could these new techniques be used to prevent other incurable diseases?
You know, very much, Anthony. The idea of being able to repair parts of the cell while it's still in the embryonic stage is really a huge leaps and bounds ahead. You know, one of the things we do have to point out, though, is that this changes only the mitochondria, the energy source of the cell. It doesn't affect our nucleus, which has our 23 chromosomes, 20,000 genes, all of the things that make us us. This is purely about protecting our cells from a medical disorder.
Very interesting debate. Next up this morning, running faster and farther isn't necessarily better. A new study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology finds that light joggers may outlive more intense runners. This is surprising, I think, to a lot of people. What did the study find?
It is. So the study compared joggers of all different types, light, moderate, and strenuous joggers, with sedentary non-joggers. And they found that the light joggers lowered their mortality about 78%, while moderate joggers lowered their mortality 34%, and strenuous joggers had the same mortality as the sedentary non-joggers. In terms of what seemed to be the best prescription for jogging, it was jogging 2 to 3 times a week at a pace of about 12 minutes per mile or 5 miles per hour. And for about
5 miles per hour?
Yeah.
I think people think of that as slow.
Right,
Yeah.
and for about 1 to 2.4 hours per week. So not a lot.
Wow. All right, finally, the power of music, learning how to play an instrument before the age of 14 and sticking with it for at least 10 years could help older people preserve cognitive skills like the ability to follow what others are saying. This comes from a new Canadian study published in the Journal of Neuroscience. Tests showed that older adults who had musical training in their youth were 20% faster in identifying speech sounds than their non-musician peers. This is really interesting.
If this isn't an argument to keep the arts, keep music in school, you know, I don't know a better one. And it's also not just cognitive ability. A number of studies have found that for children with psychological issues or who have psychiatric issues, music is incredibly powerful at helping them to deal with it, even more so than psychotherapy and medication. So it's something we all
Why didn't I
really
stick with the
should.
piano?
I was thinking the same thing.
Dr. Holly Phillips, Dr. Narula, thank you both so much.
Thank you.